Hey there, Bear Club! At the Mama Bear Initiative, we explore how to protect ourselves so we can protect our cubs, the people who depend on us. Join us and get the confidence you need to stay safe, make good choices, and protect yourself and those you care about. Let's go!
Hello and welcome back to the Mama Bear Initiative podcast. I'm Stephanie Dunham.
I'm Evelyn Mason.
I'm Rochelle Knapp.
We'd like to thank you for joining us today on this podcast episode. And we are starting part 2 of our interview with Clive Stewart.
Yes. Very exciting.
Yeah, the first episode was basically his bio. So now he's going to answer, I think it was like 3 of our questions that we sent to him.
Yeah, I think we got through 3.
Yeah. So, I was listening to that recording today, trying to hear what he had to say again. And, he had a lot of really interesting things to say. Like some of what he said kind of contradicted other things I'd heard or even things that I taught, because I don't know, if you watch TV enough, they'll convince you that, you can figure out what somebody's up to with their body language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And Clive said it's a waste of time to take any special courses for that.
Right.
I think there's some evidence for some reading of body language. But, if you're trying to do it, I think he's right. If you're trying to take special courses so you can be the specialist.
Yeah, that's the danger.
It's not going to work.
Yeah, because then you get a false sense of your own competence and in a stressful situation.
Right, because he basically said that, it's really hard to tell when someone's about to be violent.
Yeah, some people, and I think it can be the person individually. It can even be a cultural thing.
Right.
So you can't just, broad brush, a criminal is going to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Right. I think there's something to be said for intuition, but I don't know that unless your job requires it, I don't know that formal training is needed to know what someone's about to do.
Right, because he basically just said, 2 major things he said was to use common sense.
Yeah.
And just be normal.
Right.
Because, if we're walking around out in public, scrutinizing every corner, looking for trouble, what's going to happen?
That's just paranoia.
We're going to assume we're going to see trouble. And if we're giving off a really weird vibe, somebody who, might not even really notice us is going to notice us. What's up with her?
Yeah, because, you might be making yourself into a victim just by being weird.
Yeah, and we don't want to draw attention to ourselves, at least not that kind.
Right. I definitely don't want that kind of reason.
And that just turns into paranoia, because then you can never be relaxed or be normal because you're always worried about something happening. You're going the other direction of extremes.
Yeah. And he basically said that if you're over focused on trying to be aware of your surroundings, you're going to miss a lot.
Right. Yeah. And people who are so focused are usually the ones to be surprised.
Right.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Right.
And not in a good way.
Yeah. He also talked about fear, because we asked him, how do you deal with fear?
Yeah.
And, he gave some good information. I've always felt like fear is a friend. I think it's put in us to warn us about things that are coming, like our senses pick up information in the environment and we feel fear.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a
normal.
good thing.
Yeah. That's normal.
But I think people fear. Mm-hmm. So they worry about what's going to happen if somebody attacks me.
Yeah.
Right.
Or even I don't feel afraid, or, I'm not going to be afraid. But that's false bravado.
Right.
Everybody feels fear. It's just normal.
Yeah.
And I love what he has to say about that. That's a part that I'm going to continue to go back to, because learning how to feel afraid and still do what you need to do, that's a skill I want to develop.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've never been overly watchful myself, although there's this one time where I took a bunch of people down to Baltimore to go to a martial arts supply store. And we had to drive through one of the bad parts of town.
Okay.
And I was not paying attention to where we were. I didn't know where we were. And then I heard a couple of the guys that were with us saying, lock your door, roll your window up. And I suddenly became very paranoid.
Right.
Yeah.
So from 0 to
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was hard not to feel scared,
Right.
because you hear stories about places like that where things happen to people, and the panic was setting in. Thankfully, once we hit that area, it didn't take long to get to where we were going to.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I had a whole nother half an hour of driving.
I think it probably helped that you also had a small group of trained martial artists with you.
Yeah, it did
but
kinda
still, you were not alone.
I lived in Tacoma, Washington for 4 years, and we lived right in the ghetto, my ex-husband and I. And we had to create rules for me to not go out at night. I grew up in a very rural area.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we spent the first several years living in a rural area in California, and then we moved to Baltimore County. Then we lived in a small town in Cecil County, Maryland. And I kind of took it for granted that I was safe until we were living there, and he's suddenly like, you can't go out by yourself past 9 o'clock because there are people downstairs from our apartment selling drugs and all kinds of things going on down there. And it was a big culture shock for me for the first year, because I just kind of took it for granted. I could just do whatever I wanted. But he's like, no, it's too dangerous.
Yeah, you were coming from a rural town where
Right.
pretty much nothing happened.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, we like kept our doors
moved into
unlocked.
a major city.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
that's vastly different. And then you have Clive, who we're not just talking about rural to city, but extreme violence, as he had talked about in the the previous episode.
mm-hmm.
So, really listening to him and his perspective, I think through most of it, I always feel like, wow, this is amazing. I wouldn't have thought this way.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like just listening, I've learned something, and it's definitely going to affect what I teach people.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I've done a little bit of what he talked about, but there's a lot more that I could add in to, the training that I give people.
Yeah. And really keeping it all balanced, because I think, I've often been afraid that if I focus too much on, self-defense, so, he comes in, I'll do this, then that, then this, I'll be too paranoid. But I like the way, as we had mentioned, he does teach us, you just relax and basically you're calmly observing.
Right. And if you're going back to the whole idea of what you train the most, and
Right.
and what you do the most is what you'll do first.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're in your, dojo or whatever, and you're practicing real fighting techniques over and over and over again, and just making certain things really good, I think you'll be all right.
Yeah.
Even in like a controlled environment like sparring, I have some experience with that idea of my body just kind of knows what to do.
Yeah.
Because I've trained it into my body enough to instinctively defend, punch, whatever needs to be done.
And even getting out of the way.
Right.
I love that one.
I mean, I've over the last 8.5 years, I've done enough Dokken Kihon. I would say
block and strike.
probably 8,000 to 10,000 times.
Yeah.
That I feel like if I was needing that, it would be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna play the interview the next 20 minutes. He's going to answer 3 questions for us. And we really hope that you enjoy what you're hearing and give us some feedback. If you like what you're hearing, let us know.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. So anyway, let's get into the episode. Yeah. So that was some really interesting stuff. I mean, I can't imagine living like that, but it sounds to me like, you have a very practical understanding of violence, a practical understanding of what it takes to survive an encounter, just based off of what you said. So I really appreciate that. That's one of the things I appreciate about you, which is one of the reasons why we have you
here on our podcast because we want to talk about, things that are real. And I think in America, depending on where you live, like where I live, it's relatively safe, although crime happens.
Yeah.
It's just not as often, I guess. People don't really think about this sort of thing and don't really
They should though, because
plan for it.
if I go to your town, I bet you there's a jail there in your city or town. And if I go into the jail, it's not going to be full of nice people.
True.
There's going to be at least one murderer in that jail, probably a lot more. There's going to be a rapist or two. You can go to a small, nice town anywhere in the world. There's
Absolutely.
not going to find it.
Yeah, that's true.
You're going to find a jail and you're going to find some seriously disturbed criminals inside there. And they didn't get put in there for not committing crime.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah. So that's for our listeners. Be real. Violence happens. They're out there.
Yeah. No matter where you are,
It's not being naive.
Drug addicts, alcoholics, there's people with mental disorders. There's no place that's like, and violence is the same anywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of South African township or if you're in the nicest town in the world. But when someone's attacking you, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And if you're being attacked, you're in war. It doesn't matter if you're not in an official war, it's your war.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So that leads me to a... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's like I hear about people who don't lock their house door. You always hear in these serial killer programs. We lived in a nice place, but a guy like Jeffrey Dahmer came and moved in, and no one thought he was a bad guy, and we never locked our door.
Right. Yeah.
So the thing is it doesn't matter where you live. There's always going to be a certain degree of strange people with psychological disorders, antisocial disorders, for want of a poor term, psychopaths, but that's a bad term. It's rather social disorders, narcissistic personality disorder, especially for women. There's going to be men who suffer from various psychological issues, etc., etc.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and I'm not saying the world's dangerous and wherever you go, you live in paranoia, but at the same time, there's no place that's so safe. I worked as a bodyguard, and you can be bodyguarding people in the nicest place, but you've got to keep your eyes open because there isn't a safe place.
Right.
Actually.
Right.
That doesn't mean the places are so bad that you've got to be hyper alert all the time and living in a paranoid zone. So you can go overboard in either direction.
Yeah, you're kind of answering one of our questions because one of them was, how do you maintain awareness of potential violence without becoming paranoid? Because you just mentioned that.
So
like how do you do that?
You can't be over aware. Okay? So if you over aware, so you've got the one extreme, and everything in life is like this, is about balance. So if you live in a dream world where there's no violence, nothing ever can go wrong, you live in a nice, safe place, that's delusional. Okay. On the other hand, the other delusion is you live in a John Wick universe or something weird like that. Okay?
Yeah.
So most of the time, even if you go into the worst country in the world with this high violence, 99% of people are not violent. They're not aggressive. They're not interested in. People just want to live their lives and be peaceful. Right. Okay. Right. Most people who act out and act aggressively, they're looking for it's social violence. Social violence pushes you or that. They're not intent upon criminal harm, the kind of thing that could get them thrown in jail and you, unfortunately, in hospital or worse. Okay. So how do you maintain a level of awareness? Well, most of the time, has to be my experience, if you're actually over aware, you're unaware.
Mm-hmm.
It's like as if you're looking through a narrow hole everywhere you look around you. So you're seeing spots, but you're not seeing everything. And
Mm-hmm.
Right.
if you're too busy looking for bad people and threats, you'll zone into them, and then they'll zone back into you. But you have to be careful of. Okay, and you won't notice the 99% of people who are actually quite nice and friendly and actually
Yeah.
aren't a problem at all. So,
Right.
say I go to in South Africa into a township and I'm focused upon all the threats. I'll create my own threats because
Yeah.
people will pick up that I'm got a funny vibe, a funny attitude, and if the criminals become aware, I'm aware of them, they'll want to focus on me. So
Right.
Mm.
don't be over focused upon threats. You have to just live life and be passively aware, in my opinion.
Ah,
Okay,
Yeah.
so
that's good.
passively aware is like and you know use your mind a bit. Most places, like if you're in your car, what do you have to be aware of? Other traffic. If you're in the middle of a police station, it's unlikely you have to watch out for muggers. Okay,
Right.
Right.
That's true.
so if unless you're in a place where you're alone and you could be followed and stuff like that, there's no need to create too much awareness. And I know from bodyguarding that people that are over aware are actually the easiest to surprise. I mean, look at
Really?
even Ronald Reagan. He had how many bodyguards? He's the US president. He's got special bodyguards. Everyone's watching. They all aware. Still someone shot him. Okay?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
there's a limit to awareness. It doesn't matter who you are. And sometimes, if everyone's aware, over focused, there's many spots missed. But if you're passively aware and you're just in tune with the place you are, right? So if I go to an old age home and I'm like, okay, let's look around the corners. Where's the attackers? So
Yeah.
you're going to have a weird.
Yeah.
You're not going to be happy. Old age people aren't going to be happy. No one's going to be happy. You're just going to be like a weirdo, right?
Right.
So you need to be in sync with your environment and the people around you, right?
I like
So
that. That's good.
if you harmonize with your environment, then watch other people instead of looking for specific threats. Watch and interact with people, and when the mood is strange, you know that something odd is going on. If you're walking by yourself in an area and it's dark and stuff like that, then you walk in the middle and then you have to watch out. That's a completely different situation. Then obviously you need to be aware
Right.
of intersect.
Wait.
But for most of life, no.
Yeah.
Not
So
at all.
that leads us to the next question, which Rochelle's going to take.
How do you know when someone is about to be violent?
You don't always know. It's impossible to always know. Again, I'll go back to the President Reagan example. All his bodyguards didn't know the guy was going to be violent and shoot him, right? So don't live in the world in a dream zone. So there's people who'll tell you you can do body language courses and this and that, and it'll tell you it doesn't work. Okay?
No.
So you don't always know when someone's going to be violent. When I try and understand other people, often I'm just projecting my mind into them. So I'm trying to understand when I would be violent, but I don't know when they would be violent. Now, besides obvious signs, like you see the person's getting aggressive and these obviously, and I really don't think you need to do any training to spot that, right? Besides that, just watch and keep passive. Don't if you look to see a sign as violent, you'll mistake it. You don't know. So you watch them, don't assume. Because I've made the mistake of assuming someone's violent, but they're not.
Right.
Right.
And I've assumed they're being aggressive, but they're not. And many times they just stop being aggressive. And then sometimes I've made the mistake of assuming a person's passive. So what I do is, if I was in that position, is I take just enough range. I just watch the person so that if they became violent, without me realizing it, I would have a little bit of distance and space to be aware of the attack. But I can't answer how I would be aware whenever someone's going to be violent, because after many years, I still can't tell. So
Right.
Yeah.
there are people who will
Makes
tell
sense.
you they can tell. I'm not one of them. So
Right.
it's just keep in your head that you can always be surprised. Don't be surprised if you're surprised, and don't be surprised if you misunderstand. So I'd say the best method is just be a normal person and use your common sense. Don't
Yeah.
do
Makes sense.
special courses on body language or anything weird like that, because that's someone's making money out of. I know people that say they got body language course or this and that, and if a person can attack you, they look this way and they do that. No, it's not. And all this assumes you can see the person, right?
Right.
Now, criminals don't attack you if you can see them. So if you can't see the person, well, then anything you've got to pick up they're going to attack you is useless in any case, because they're standing behind you or to the side. So a lot of times one person will come up, because most of the times criminals attack you in any case, it's two people or more. It's unusual
Okay.
for criminals anywhere in the world to come one-on-one. So one will distract you. And it doesn't mean they'll distract you by talking to you. It can even be that they walk past or something and bump you, or sometimes a common thing is a person will bump and push you and glare at you. And as you focus on them, that's when the other person attacks you. So,
Gotcha.
and you never knew they were there. Another common situation I've seen is you're inside a place and someone watches you when you're walking out and you're going to your car or something. As you open your car door, someone will distract you with the noise or something, and you think, oh, that's the criminal. But they're not, that's not the person. So I'd say even always assume you don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Always,
That's good.
you
All right.
haven't worked out the situation. That's
Gotcha.
about the
Okay.
best I can say.
Evelyn, do you want to?
Yeah.
Next
So,
question.
what about fear? How do you handle fear in a violent situation?
So there's two types. One is a violent situation that happens suddenly, in which case you don't have time for fear because you're suddenly being attacked or whatever. Okay?
Yeah.
The second is when you obviously see something coming and the criminal or whoever is trying to intimidate you or threaten you. The first thing is everybody experiences fear. Unknown person, I experience fear. So someone comes up to threaten me, of course I experience fear.
Right.
There's different degrees of fear, right? But you still experience some fear. So it's actually desirable to feel some amounts of fear, because without fear, you'd be stupid. So
That's true.
Yeah.
you get
Good point.
like aggressive men that are like macho and they think, oh, I don't need to be scared of anything. They should be. Okay? They're delusional. They're living in a delusion.
Yeah.
They're invincible. So first thing is don't fear fear. Don't be scared of feeling fear. A degree of fear is necessary. Now the question is it paralyzing fear that freezes you up, or is it fear you can deal with?
Right.
So paralyzing fear, that's something you need to speak to a psychologist about, to be honest.
Right.
That's their speciality. It's like, I'm not going to tell you how to cure cancer. I'm not a doctor, right?
Right.
But normal amounts of fear. Someone's threatening you. They're bigger. They're stronger. They're more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
They're more violent. You minding your own business and something to me. You experience
Right.
your fear. The first thing is often when you're attacked or something happens, that fear disappears. Okay?
Yeah,
Really?
that's true.
Mm.
Yes.
Well, I wouldn't know.
It's like when I was in the army or you've been shot at, right? And you're going in there, you're terrified,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely terrified. You can barely move your legs. You feel like you're locked up.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get used to it. In fact, the more often it happens, the more scared you become because you've seen what happens, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
you don't have any delusions left,
Right.
right? It's only young and dumb men who maybe watched war movies. First time they go into a war, they're very brave, and 10 seconds later they're not. Okay,
Right.
so
Makes
Right.
sense.
but everyone experiences that terror. But then
Right.
once you actually get into it and the fear and terror vanishes because you become so, I've got to survive, I've got to do this. It's
Mm.
natural in yourself.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
like sometimes you're so scared and then the person hits you because you were like, you paralyzed, like the rabbit in the headlights kind of thing.
Mhm.
Then you get hit with it. It hasn't killed you. You're not
Yeah.
dead. And suddenly you realize that, and your instinct, everyone's naturally got within them the ability to protect themselves and fight. You're not the descendant of two people, you're the descendant of thousands of generations of survivors. If they weren't survivors, you wouldn't be here.
Right.
So
Right.
everybody's a success story.
Mhm.
Everybody is the product of hundreds and hundreds of generations of survivors and succeeders. So you have within you that ability.
Mhm.
Now, many people are surprised who've never been attacked, never been in a violent situation, when it happens, that at first they go through like a zone, a phase, they're paralyzed, they can't do anything. And then suddenly they're able to overcome. It's like an actor goes up onto stage and they almost lock the stage fright, even if they're an extremely good actor or brilliant singer. And then as the action happens, they're back in the aerial zone.
Right.
So the
Right.
fear of what's going to
Makes
happen
sense, yeah.
is bigger than when something happens.
Right.
And
Right.
then so I think it's about have faith in yourself, what's
Mhm.
inside of you, right? And
Mhm. Yeah.
because you're experiencing fear, that's normal. It's not wrong, and it's
Right.
don't be worried about experiencing fear.
Mhm.
Nice. I think
Yeah.
I think a
Wouldn't be a
lot of
single
people
Yeah. I think a lot of people think because what you're calling paralyzing fear, a lot of people think that they're automatically just going to freeze in a situation, and um, I guess some people do, but it sounds to me like what you're saying is that a normal reaction is going to be a stab of fear, but then you're going to be able to overcome it because of your instinct to survive. Is that basically what you're saying?
Well, sometimes it's like when you actually hurt,
Mm-hmm.
your fear goes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
you're standing there scared, and the person hits you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Right.
and it's not as bad as you thought. And if it is, well, that's life. I mean,
Yeah.
sorry,
Mm-hmm.
we all die, we all experience failure, and nothing's guaranteed to work. So I think the other thing is don't look for guaranteed success.
Right.
You know, don't look for like, I will absolutely win. Just say, I'll try my best. I'm not looking for any situation. It's been forced upon me.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm attacked,
Right.
and anything you do gives you some more chance. Now, just remember, the aggressor wants total non-compliance, right? I mean, you see this with a lion picking on a honey badger. South African honey badger weighs 50 kilograms.
Honey badgers.
The honey badger, like, just trying to say, this is it, I've had it. You're not picking on me.
Right.
A crazy story. I had this house cat, Mauser, and he was this big feed, and he used to. He was a serial killer of cats, right? Kill these small lizards. And one day he was coming down at this lizard, and it had enough, and it jumped and it bit him on the nose. Tiny little thing like that. He never picked on a lizard again.
I love
Because I learned his lesson.
Because he never was looking for a fight; he was looking for a victim.
Right.
Okay.
That's good.
So most people who attack are looking for victims. They're not looking for someone who stands up to them. And
Right.
what happens often is if you, I'm not saying this will happen all the time. I mean, but oftentimes when you stand up for yourself, that's not what the person wants. Like they'll say to you, "Don't look at me," right? The common thing of it, "Don't look at me," and if you don't look at him, that's when he hits you.
Right.
Right.
Right. Sucker punch. Yeah.
Because well, it's not just sucker punch because you've shown compliance. Okay, so excellent. Now I can hit you. It's not even about whether it's like sometimes you'll get a aggressor. They'll actually be behind you instead of attacking you from behind. They'll turn you around so they can see you in the face and then hit you.
Wow.
So many attacks are like that are motivated psychologically. Someone's got an aberrant psychology, so that's their weakness.
Right.
Right.
And if they've got that aberrant psychology, they don't. If you have a good spirit and you stand up for yourself, you don't look away, etc., even though you're experiencing fear, right? So you're scared, but you still look at them in the eyes. Don't look away. If they threaten you to look away, when you show the submissiveness, that's when you get attacked.
Right.
Not because of the sucker punch and you can't see it coming. It's because of their mindset and psychology. The person is, I don't want to put labels on it, like sociopathy, sociopath and things like that, because those are often misdescribed. But you have a person who's, this is their kick, this is their thrill, this is whatever. And once you show submission, so if I'm a predator, lion, dog, and I see submissiveness, that's when I attack.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow, that was really good.
Yeah. So much good material. And if you're like me, you're going to want to go back and listen again, maybe pause and think about it.
Yeah.
And then listen to some more, pause and think about it.
Yeah.
So much good.
I'm definitely going to put some of the points he made in the description so you have a reference of what Clive had to say about various things.
Yeah.
So, we'll have a part 3 coming up. That'll be the last, 3 or 4 questions. And that should wrap us up. And, I just, again, really appreciate Clive taking the time to talk to us, to answer our questions, to give us insight. It's just so valuable.
Yes.
Very firsthand insight from somebody who's lived through severe violence, which is unfortunate, but his wealth of knowledge benefits us.
Yeah, he has the credentials.
Yeah, and he keeps telling the stories about things, and it's like really making a difference for me.
Yeah, so many stories. All good.
All good, useful information, validation, that kind of thing. It's just, I don't know, it's just been a really good experience.
Definitely.
Yeah, so we'd like to thank you for joining us today on this podcast episode. We hope that you enjoyed what you listened to. Remember to follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, or TikTok, or Facebook or Instagram. We put out some reels, a few times a week that are related to, either the clip or either the episode that we're going to do or some other useful information. Share this with your friends. If you like this episode,
Yeah.
share it.
Yeah. Think of a couple of people who could really benefit from it.
Yeah. Because I think
And,
we all need to be a lot less naive.
Yes.
I agree wholeheartedly with that.
This is a great way to get there.
Yeah. So, this is the end of this podcast episode. I'm Stephanie Dunham.
I'm Evelyn Mason.
I'm Rochelle Knapp.
All right. We'll see ya.
Bye.
Bye, Bear Club.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks so much for joining us as we discussed such an important topic. We hope you got some food for thought and encouragement to keep going and keep growing. See you later, Bear Club.
Remember to join the Bear Club on our Patreon page for exclusive content. The link is in the description. You can find our podcast on Google, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.